Our next speaker is a professor in the War Studies Department at King's College, London. His new book, Pakistan, A Hard Country, will be published later this year. After a recent visit to the country, he wrote, "The danger to Pakistan is not of a Taliban revolution, but rather of creeping destabilization and terrorism, making any Pakistani help to the US against the Afghan Taliban even less likely than it is at present." Ladies and gentlemen, Anatol Lieven.
Thank you so much. Another member of the panel described me as a poacher turned gamekeeper. I used to be a journalist. I like to stress that because it meant that I did actually live in Pakistan for a couple of years. Yes, with reference to the last speaker, I was a little reassured psychologically, I must say, on visiting a radical madrasa in Pakistan this summer, to arrive at the door and find some of the students outside on the lawn playing cricket, of course. What that reflects is something that I think it is extremely important to remember in Britain, which is that this country is organically linked to Pakistan in a way that it is not to Afghanistan. This says something very important about our strategic interests as well. This is, however, not just a matter of sentiment, it's a matter of mathematics. Pakistan has 6 times the population of Afghanistan, 3 times the population of Afghanistan and Iraq put together. But also, of course, we will leave one day Afghanistan. That is certain. Everybody knows it and admits it. I hope that we leave with honour and a measure of success, but leave we will. We will never leave Pakistan because Pakistan is part of Britain. Pakistan is here in Britain, as many people in this audience represent, is linked to Britain in many British cities. The negative side of this, of course, is that this means that the terrorist threat to Britain, insofar as it exists, is also principally linked to people whose families originally were from Pakistan, not from Afghanistan. So, Pakistan, not Afghanistan, is in the long term our key strategic interest in that part of the world, and not just for Britain, but for the region and the West in general. And on that score, I do have to agree, albeit with qualifications, with Imran Khan, that more than any other single factor, it is Western policies and the Western presence in Afghanistan which is driving radicalisation in Pakistan. That has emerged unequivocally from my visits to Pakistan over the past 2 years. And it reflects the fact, once again, as has been said, that the great majority of Pakistanis are not radical Islamists, but the overwhelming majority are bitterly critical of American policies in particular, and Britain's association with these policies. That has a lot to do, of course, with the Middle East and America's support for Israel and Britain's failure to do anything on behalf of the Palestinians. But above all, it refers to our role in Afghanistan. I was a journalist with the Afghan Mujahedeen fighting the Soviets in the late 1980s. And I must say I have been shocked to find in recent years that a majority of ordinary Pakistanis who I've met regard the Taliban today very much in the same light that they regarded the Afghan Mujahedeen fighting the Soviets. Now, by the way, that also means that they don't necessarily much like or admire them as people, and they certainly don't want to live under them. But they believe that they have a natural right to fight for what they see as the independence of their country against alien occupiers, which, as they see it, is us. I'm not endorsing that view, but I think it is essential to reflect it. I do not advocate, however, a rapid scuttle from Afghanistan. I do not want to see that happen to the British Army or even the American Army. I don't wish to see radicals emboldened by this. And I must also say that I think that given our terrible contribution to the Afghan disaster by our policies over the past 30 years or so, we also have a moral responsibility to try to bring about some kind of semi-peaceful settlement in Afghanistan. However, I think we must also be very clear about various things. The first is that we must not sacrifice Pakistan for the sake of Afghanistan. Now, I find that in official circles, informed political circles, everybody understands that in principle, But of course the problem is that we're fighting a war in Afghanistan, and war has its own logic. There is therefore a natural drag towards trying to win the war that we're in, even perhaps at the cost of a much bigger long-term strategic disaster for our interests. What that means above all is that we must not spread the war to Pakistan. On specific targeted strikes against Taliban and al-Qaeda leaders at present in the tribal areas of Pakistan, I'm something of an agnostic. They may have their tactical justification, but it would be insane to spread this campaign further into new areas of Pakistan, like northern Baluchistan. This would only spread the war, first for Pakistan, later for us. Secondly, I think something that needs to be said, because it never is said really, is that we have always seen Pakistan as a problem in the context of the Afghan Taliban. Because Pakistan does give shelter to them. I mean, mostly ordinary Pakistanis among the Pashtun population, but to a degree, the security forces as well. It is, however, possible to turn this round. If we think, as many of us do, more and more of us do in fact, that at some stage it will be necessary to talk, not just to the good Taliban, whoever they are, but to the Taliban leadership in general, then Pakistan could play an essential positive role, from our point of view, in bringing that Taliban leadership to the negotiating table. Indeed, Pakistan may be the only international force that can do so. At that point, of course, Pakistan would come to seem not a military problem for us, but a great diplomatic asset for us. The thing to remember also in this context is that if we think that we are going to have to talk seriously to the Taliban at any stage, we have to start making contacts now. This kind of negotiation, historically speaking, has always taken a very, very long time. Northern Ireland is an example of that. A brief aside, when it comes to exerting influence, sympathetic, friendly influence, on Pakistan from that point of view, the key international player may well turn out not to be Washington, but Beijing. The path to some kind of settlement in Afghanistan could lie to an extent that has not been recognized through China. But I just sort of throw that out as an aside because nobody ever talks about it, so I thought I should. Briefly, will Pakistan survive long enough to do this, since this is part of the question tonight? The answer is yes. All the talk of Pakistan collapsing, disintegrating, Pakistan being a failed state has been greatly exaggerated. It is certainly troubled, as I've often written, and there are great dangers in Pakistan. But the Pakistani army has proved over the past year that it can and has defeated the Taliban in Swat and gone a considerable way to defeating it in Waziristan. But the Pakistani army has done this, backed by leading Pakistani political parties, because the Pakistani Taliban was clearly seen to emerge as a very serious threat to Pakistan, to the Pakistani state and the army that represents that state. And after all, if, as I've said, Pakistan is the key question and our key interest in that part of the world and the key force for stability or instability, then we should be very glad of that. But we must also recognize that, once again, is obvious to everybody, but we sometimes forget, which is that the Pakistani army is the Pakistani army. It's sworn an oath to defend Pakistan, not the United States. The army, and as I've said, the population from which that army is drawn, sees a key difference between fighting the Pakistani Taliban, who are rebels against Pakistan, and the Afghan Taliban, who are rebels against us. But then again, if Pakistan and the Pakistani army are our key interests, we cannot afford to push them too far against the sentiments of their own people. Thank you.